Alright, I'm gonna give you my ahoy at the start here, but we are facing absolute chaos today. I've slept for 5 hours maybe, and things are getting ridiculous in a very good way. We have tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of news about New World because they decided to not just drop the flail info, but also the PTR announcement, info about the PTR, as well as information about various other things that come through data mining. I don't know how to cover all of that. I'm gonna try here. I'm gonna give you some old footage in the background of a random war from way back in the day, just to have something to look at for you. We're gonna talk about the patch first, and then I will figure out how we talk about the rest. I will be live streaming on Twitch, links down below, in the next days, while the PTR is live. I will be posting early trading tips on Patreon as usual, and I will try to also somehow fit in the trading tips video, even though that has massively changed. It was supposed to come out today and just be a normal video about the things we knew before PTR, and now we know everything about PTR, so everything has changed. So things are a little crazy, bear with me. We're starting with the changes from the Rise of the Angry Earth PTR patch notes themselves. The PTR will officially open on September 12th at 8 AM PT, so in other words, very soon for most of you. Maybe by the time you're watching this, the PTR is already live, and it will only run a couple days. It will only run until September 18th, so you have 6 days-ish to do stuff here. All of the changes that we'll see here are exactly the kind of stuff that you would expect, exactly the kind of things that were announced, basically everything that is in the expansion, also including the influence race, so that's interesting because they have to schedule that somehow, I suppose. Let's get straight into the changes here. Both Mangled Heights and Malevolence have both been reworked into solo landmarks. Brightwood Tavern was changed, and Banana Pile can now be picked up in housing. A bunch of expedition fixes, some other AI fixes, and some changes to Outpost Rush and Invasion AI, I guess to scale them better. And then we get into the real stuff, the combat changes. Weakened status effects now reduce the effects of acid damage. In other words, Sandworm is going to be a lot easier. Fix an issue where the Runeglass of Psychic Annealing gems cause taunts to not trigger when slotted into weapons, very long and frustrating bug. Fix an issue that made some attack chains cause client and server desyncs. Reduced self-healing by 10% and consumable healing by 20% while in PvP game modes. Very big deal. 20% healing away from your pots is huge. And I've always said that New World is too pot heavy, that the PvP meta revolves around just spamming pots way too much because it's too easy to do so. This is going to impact that significantly. There are other changes later in the patch notes that may also affect in some ways, but this one's big. You want an even bigger one? Increased dodge distance for medium and heavy equip loads. Do I need to say anything? That's just going to be super crazy. I don't know how far it will be, but it's going to be very spicy. And medium gets even more. Updated medium dodge animations to better maintain speed throughout the animation, and improved transition to sprint out of dodge for all equip loads. So the problem with medium was that basically you hop forward and then you kind of stop, and it results in you not actually getting any additional movement. You get iframes, but you are as fast as someone just normally running, which always felt pretty bad, to be honest. And that used to be cancelable when you could do the weapon sheath way back in the day. This sounds like they're basically doing it in a way where you get that without the weapon sheath though. This was a big change back then because it was a change that at the time when they originally did, like took the sheathing away, made light significantly more viable than medium in various situations, and that was kind of what started the light meta, so this may actually shift things pretty drastically if there's enough chase potential in medium with dodging now. The medium hit sprint delay is also reduced from 1 second down to 0.75 seconds, and in light the sprint delay is reduced from 1.5 seconds down to 1 second, so you get a little bit more chase potential, escape potential, safety in that regard. Lifesteal is getting some limiters, either getting an 0.1 seconds cooldown on some things, or it's a maximum of 3 targets for AoE things, so you can't just get a massive random heal just because there happen to be a lot of enemies around. It's a bit more controlled, or if you hit a lot of enemies at once or something. When it comes to attribute bonuses, we're getting to see some of the changes here. I will have a separate video where we talk about way more about that now that we actually have the data from PTR. But just to start out with here, we have the updated 250 strength attribute bonus to apply to the entire basic melee attack and not just the startup. I think this is like the stamina region one. It's always been a kind of weird one, so I'm not really sure what's going on there. If it's actually going to be good, I doubt it, but we'll see. Then there are 2 new attribute bonus nodes for all attributes, at 25 and 350. Also updated the functionality of and moved around several existing nodes. They updated the 300 dex attribute bonus to no longer be dodge stamina reduction. I think this is good for the health of the game. I know this can be frustrating, it ruins certain builds a little bit for a while, but just to keep things balanced between different roles, like for example the kite potential with light dex was always very insane, and also the chase potential, and likewise the avoidance potential with medium dex was very, very high. No longer the case. Instead, it will now cleanse CC status effects on weapon swap with a 15 seconds cooldown. If you can activate this while you are CC'd, so if you can activate it while you're stunned or maybe even knocked down, I doubt it's going to work on knockdown, but if it does, that would be very, very strong. But yeah, it's not bad, to be honest. I don't hate it. I think it's a pretty decent perk, not quite as good as the previous one, but there is definitely some safety involved with this as well. The HP gain from leveling is increased slightly, and the amount of XP gained from con is increased slightly, done on to account for the gear score and level increase. Again, this is just the surface level of the attributes. Separate video on that. Consider subscribing and clicking the bell if you are interested in that. Next up, damage changes. The ranged and magic weapons in the game get increased base damage globally, but the damage is scaled down in PvP fights. So it's a kind of a weird reverse way to do it, I suppose, but it works out, I guess. So in the in-game tooltips, you will see those separate values. You will know what kind of damage you're getting in each. And for the musket, the base damage is increased from 78 to 83 in PvE, and then reduced down by 12% to 73 in PvP. This is actually a nerf, it seems like, because it says down to 73 from previously 78. And this is something that is consistent for all of the ranged weapons here. I'm not sure if this is some mistake on the wording, because the values don't really make sense to me here, unless they're intending to nerf all the ranged weapons, which I doubt. It could be possible because there's some other things that they're doing in that regard that kind of would offset it a little bit. Hold that thought at least. I wouldn't trust these numbers completely. There's some other numbers later on that I wouldn't trust completely either. So yeah, don't get upset about that yet until we know more. On the bow, the values that we have here is increased the damage from 67 to 72 in PvE, and then reduce it down by 14% in PvP down to 62, which kind of goes in line with the old Bane values as well, so it wouldn't really make sense again. And then Blunderbuss, we have an increase from 78 to 80 in PvE, so a relatively small increase, and then down by 9% in PvP down to 73. The self-healing power in PvP game modes is reduced by 10%, and the consumable healing is down by 20%, but we already talked about that. Every armor loadout has inherent crit damage reduction now. Light is 15%, medium 20%, heavy is 25%. So heavy is like 5 pieces of resilient, with resilient being gone, and light will get like 10% less now. However, there are other ways to increase the value, which we can talk about in the future. The diminishing returns on damage bonus modifiers from 351 to 500 have been slightly increased because we have more points now, and they want to encourage you to split your points between more than just one thing. This mostly hits single scaling weapons in PvE, like int weapons or strength weapons. When doing damage to a target, the abilities equipped by that specific weapon will now be used to apply additional on-hit status effects instead of the abilities equipped by the current active weapon, which can differ. I guess this is, for example, if you throw a Gravwell and then it switches, or you switch over to your Warhammer, it doesn't somehow use the effects from your Warhammer, but it uses the effects from your Great Axe. They added acid damage and resistance to various existing status effects, gems, and other effects to allow it to function similar to any other damage type. I'm not quite sure what this means, where exactly this comes in, if there was going to be like an acid damage weapon gem now, or whatever else. They need to show us more about that to really fully know what's going on with that. Sword and Shield gets two fixes. First of all, the slows don't refresh from certain effects anymore, from damage over time effects, and the lower tier shields, like some kite shields, actually had better values than tower shields, and that should be fixed now. Ice Gauntlet gets a very significant change. Wind Chill and Ice Spikes are now treated as ranged instead of melee attacks. This means on one hand, they will likely do significantly less stamina damage than they currently do, and on the other hand, this also means that they will be affected by elemental aversion. There was a big problem with the Ice Gauntlet because you took way more damage than from any other ability in comparison. There's still a few missing abilities in that regard. I really hope they just completely iron that out, so elemental aversion just works against everything elemental. At least everything elemental that is ranged. We'll get a quick bug fix to catch me if you can here, and the Blunderbuss gets Another cancel fix, basically, allowing Splitting Grenade to cancel Mortar, Charge, and Fire without cooldown. That's fixed now. The damage fall off of basic shots fired from 10 to 40 meters away has been removed. I guess this is kind of to counteract the fact that everyone will have a little bit more con, a little bit more health through perks. So I think the blunderbuss, otherwise I would say why would the blunderbuss get a buff, but I think the blunderbuss might end up needing some buffs after these changes. So I can kind of see the angle they're taking here, giving it just a little bit more consistency in terms of damage output. The blunderbuss will also be fully loaded when initially equipped, and Splitting Gate's Child Grenade explosions should now deal damage all the time. The rapier fixed an issue that caused the controlled breathing passive of the rapier to trigger off some damage over time effects, and fixed an issue where the rapier's flurry animation could be cancelled to cast Tondo twice. The musket gets an entire surprise rework. First of all, the shots are changed to use projectiles instead of hit scan. Finally, they committed to it. So they will just be bullets with probably a bit of drop-off. They have bullet penetration, so they go through targets. All of that accuracy stuff that they previously did has been mostly reverted. You just have to rely on your aim now, but you probably have to predict some drop-off. No more hit scan. There are a ton of changes here. I will not go through all of them in this video because they warrant their own video. The musket changes are so massive, I will talk about that separately, especially in context of the perks that were also changed, the weapons that we get and everything. There's so much going on. To give you a basic idea of what direction we're taking here, a lot of this goes somewhere towards less RNG damage spikes, more fighting in mid-range especially, more reward for hitting multiple players with a shot, which I guess goes in line with the bullet penetration it has now, and also some buffing, some debuffing happening, like weakens for example, as well as a ton of stuff that kind of pushes you towards using, especially the trapper tree side, just kind of going in this mid-close range, using traps, trying to bait out things, and then still doing very high damage while enemies are just a little bit away from you, but not too far. There are some perks here that are a bit weird, like for example the Sniper ultimate is now Deadeye, which will on one hand increase your damage for headshots by 15%, which is good, but doesn't have the zoom anymore. And now if you headshot someone and you penetrate through and hit someone else, then your next shot inflicts a bleed, which sounds extremely conditional. But again, this is a small part of what's happening, and generally it seems like there are a lot of things happening with the musket that I think make it a lot more interesting as a weapon. It's a very unique playstyle rather than just sitting far away and shooting things. I'm sure there will be some early complications with these changes, especially because they're switching over to projectile, but I think for the long-term health of the musket, this actually allows it to get significant changes. This allows it to get buffs or nerfs that are much more appropriate to the overall design philosophy of New World as a whole, I would say. So I think these changes are great. We'll look into some of the perks later on and talk about the musket separately in a future video. At that point, I will hopefully also have some PTR footage to show you so you can actually see those things in action. For the Void Gauntlet, some of the int perks didn't properly apply, that's fixed, and also fixed an issue that caused players not to return to Voidblade basic attacks after casting Essence Rupture. The Hatchet's Final Blow upgrade had an issue where it didn't deal damage, and the Berserk ability was cancelled and activated without playing the animation, which I guess is just a full animation cancel for Berserk being removed. So yeah, that would be interesting. I think some people will not like that one. I thought it was coming eventually, but yeah, this sounds like we won't have the dodge Berserk light attack cancel anymore. Or any other cancel for that matter. Fire Staff also gets a much requested nerf on one hand, but also a buff along with that. The Pyrodancer upgrade, which removes the cooldown from Flamethrower, now has a 2.5 seconds cooldown if you get staggered. It's not super long, but it will disrupt your damage a little bit. This is especially relevant in the context of Flamethrower versus Greatsword, because that was typically a matchup where the Greatsword has very limited counter potential because it doesn't have the right CC to deal with a Flamethrower, and now it can just use the stagger and disrupt the Flamethrower, so a little bit more back and forth in that regard. But on the other hand, Flamethrower doubled the hit rate of the ability damage and dot damage and halved the damage for both. This was done to make the hits trigger faster but deal less damage. They also increased the number of stacks on a target to trigger the accelerating Flamethrower from 2 stacks to 4 stacks to compensate, because that's also going to happen faster. I think the ability will feel more satisfying with a more consistent, quicker tick rate, so you win some, you lose some, I guess. The Great Axe had an issue that caused the Great Axe's Greed and Sword's Empowering Stab passive empowers effects to not refresh properly on reapplication. Not sure why that's mentioned together here, but yeah, those should work. Warhammer fixed an issue where the outnumbered passive would still be active after killing enemies or exiting combat. Devourer Heartrune would sometimes fail to cast at certain camera angles, and Detonate is getting hit again. Due to the Detonate being able to inherit damage from players and its power being well beyond what was intended, reduces power. I don't know why they don't just take away the inheriting damage property, but I guess that's more complicated on the technical side. They're reducing the base damage by another 20%, and they're increasing the rend on the brutal variant from 30 to 50%. I think 30 was already a pretty scary territory, but 50 is just... that's brutal in a war. If you run in a war, you now do less damage with Detonate and you get 50% rend. You kind of don't try to get away from someone who uses Detonate anymore maybe, but rather just turn on them and blow them up immediately before the Detonate explodes. Depends on how they play it, obviously. If they play it smart and charge in the right moment, you can't do that. But yeah, very high risk compared to what it used to be, and I think that's good. I think it would be nice if we actually end up seeing some other Heartrunes, maybe also the new one. Perks have been reworked across the board. That also includes the perk pools for various crafting and dropped items and whatnot. So tons going on there. They say dropped gear should have a much higher chance of yielding 3 usable perks. Players shouldn't need to collect large numbers of required sets of gear, because, you know, Ward and Bane are gone, and remove perk combinations that are never usable. Notable changes. Greatly reduced bad perk combinations by removing or improving unused perks. For example, mana, hate reduction, etc. I thought hate reduction actually had a purpose, but oh well. Anyways, this is a bit of a hidden trading tip here, I guess, in this video, since the trading tip video might come a little bit later. The perks here could be an interesting purchase. Any craft mod that has these perks could be nice. They could just turn into dust, but usually they're not very expensive, so maybe we get something nice out of it. So yeah, that's something worth considering. They reduce the effectiveness of most used and easy to reach conditional perks, so they don't outshine others, for example Keen and Vicious. We'll see what exactly happens to those values further down. They reduced the number of required gear sets a player needs to collect through the removal of wards and resistance, obviously, and they removed perks that impacted server performance. For example, Chain, cooldown, like reduced CDR perks, I guess, cooldown perks, and added maximum stacks, refreshing. So refreshing is still there, but I guess other CDR perks are not. So like maybe we've got refreshing ward, refreshing evasion, and refreshing. I think those are the big ones. So I guess refreshing is likely the only one left, but they removed multiple. And Chain never really worked properly in many situations, so kind of understandable, especially in wars and stuff. Yeah, it just hit the performance, and it's not that important of a perk to have, I guess, that they would keep it and rather just have other perks be better. I'm fine with that, to be honest. They combine split perks, we already know about this, so there's no weighted towards strength, like a strength con split perk, where you have more strength than con, but rather it's now 50-50 if you have split perks. They also added in new perks to categories that have the lowest number of combinations. For example, healing staffs had very narrow perk range, so we're adding more life staff perks. Healing staffs, interesting word. Common perk changes. Refreshing ward can no longer generate on any dropped gear, there we go. Refreshing evasion also can no longer generate, so it's only refreshing again. And luck has been capped and will no longer scale after 625 gear score. It does, however, still seem to drop on new gear, so it's just capped in terms of the value. Right, ready to get into the thick of it with all the weapon perk changes? Again, these are all basically indirect trading tips. Everything here can be applied to trading. Keep this in mind. Consider if you want to buy or sell anything here. Hated can no longer generate on magic or ranged weapons, so only for melees. Kind of unfortunate, kind of sad, I think, in a way, because, I don't know, maybe this just never worked on ranged weapons. Maybe that was a problem. But like, I do like ranged tanking, unusual tanking things like bow or ice gauntlet and stuff. I guess it would still work with Carnelian, so I guess it's just hated itself. Hind, this perk will no longer generate on any newly dropped gear. So on existing gear, it will remain unchanged. This is going to be a pattern for most of these old perks. Vicious reduced the critical damage bonus from a maximum of 13% down to 7%. Very interesting. I want to mention this in the context of Rogue not getting that treatment, apparently, according to anything here. There's no mention of Rogue. You would think that they would scale both down together to keep some sort of balance between them. But in the PTR, it looks like Rogue may be nerfed, maybe 11% now. Big question mark. This also goes in line, obviously, with the resilient removal. So yeah, there's some bit of back and forth adjustments here to make things not too out of control. For Enchanted, the damage bonus is reduced from 10.5% to 5%. That's a pretty hard hit, honestly, for a perk that wasn't used in that many builds to begin with. Ruinous, basically removed. Blessed is a bit of a typo here. The previous maximum value was 21%, not 12%, and it's being reduced down to 12% now, from 21%, so a pretty significant nerf. Refreshing Move reduced the cooldown reduction from 3.2% to 2%. Lifestealing increased the life gain from 5.8% to 7.1%. Considering how many damage perks are getting nerfed, maybe this is making lifestealing a little bit more appealing for some people in some situations at least. Maybe like a bruiser would be more likely to consider it now, and I know some bruiser players already liked it a fair bit. Keenly Empowered reduced the damage bonus from 20% to 10%. There are plenty of other empowers though, so this shouldn't be too bad. Keen Speed has my name on it. If you know how I used to play, I used to love Keen Speed back in the day when it still had that shorter cooldown, and we're going back towards that territory. Lowered the cooldown from 10 seconds to 7 seconds. 5-second duration, 7-second cooldown. Pretty solid if you ask me. Very interesting perk. I already have 200s in my storage, so I'm happy. Siphoning Blow is gone for good. Chain Lightning is gone. Chain Fire is gone. Chain Arcane is gone. Chain Void is gone. Chain Ice is gone. Chain Nature is gone. Mortal Lifesteal, improved scaling after 625. Now grants up to 10% health. In my opinion, still not a particularly good perk when you could just have lifestealing. Mortal Siphoning, gone. Mortal Energy, improved scaling up to 50 stamina. Please don't give us more extra stamina perks, but if you put it somewhere, then put it on Mortal. Like, I don't really care. I'm fine with that. If you kill someone and you get stamina, cool. Mortal Fortification, increased the Fortify from 15 to 30% and increased the duration from 10 to 20 seconds. Pretty solid if you have a heavy build or something, but you're not getting many killing blows with that most of the time, so hey, yeah, I don't know. Keen, reduced the overall bonus from 13% down to 7%. Pretty hard hit here. Ancient Bane, this perk is gone. Angrith Bane, Beast Bane, Corrupted Bane, Lost Bane, Human Bane, same. Vorpal reduced the base scaling multiplier and now increased the scaling past 625 and now grants up to 10% headshot damage. Sure Footing, that's a perk that I surely did not expect to survive. Increased base movement speed from 20 to 30%. Added functionality that pushes and pulls are 20% less effective on you. Very weird niche thing. Kind of maybe against the new artifacts or something? I don't know. Odd. Maybe there's like a niche use in wars for this, possibly. Big question mark. Thwarting Strikes reduced the based damage multiplier. Yeah, very based. It's the base damage multiplier. Now gives you 7% damage while you have active grit. Transient Strikes, and Transient Crits, and Transient Rend, and Transient Recovery. Changed so that any heavy attack, not just fully charged heavy attack, triggers this effect. Much, much better. This is especially relevant, for example, for Warhammers. I know everyone will immediately go to Greatsword, but Greatsword you can usually, like, you do full heavies when you do heavies most of the time. You either swing lights or you do full heavies, in my opinion, in the majority of situations, especially like if you're in the right side tree. But Warhammer you do light heavies all the time. Like if you are playing Warhammer in any PvP related, or like anywhere really, not even just PvP related, it's usually your best option. So for those types of weapons, for those types of playstyles, it's much more interesting. And we'll see if that maybe affects the flail, for example, as well. On Transient Recovery specifically, you also now heal a little bit more. The maximum is now 25%. Not the old values it used to be, not quite up there, but a little bit more than before. I think it was 20% before. All of the shirking effects have the duration increased from 6 seconds to 10 seconds, whereas Attunement has the cooldown, the internal cooldown, increased from 1 second to 1.5 seconds. I think we might see some less Attunement, especially with some other perks that we're about to look at, that may just make Attunement not that appealing. I think this will be enough to kind of at least not make it the must-have best in slot all the time. Because, for example, we have Penetrating Backstab, changed the exclusive label to Damage Con 2, so it can now stack with other damage perks. This means you can craft Rogue plus Penetrating Backstab. Very interesting, very strong in my opinion. Same for Penetrating Headshot. So you can do Penetrating Headshot and Vorpal, Vicious, whatever you want to go for. But yeah, you can combine these things now, and that should make for some very interesting builds. Purifying Crits, in my opinion, could be a very good sleeper. So critical hits against a player remove 1 buff from the target, and this has a 3 seconds cooldown. If you have a weapon that can consistently crit or just crits a little bit, like I think like Blunderbuss, for example, where you just kind of have one crit somewhere in the shot all the time. This could be extremely good to just consistently remove any empowers, any fortifies, just strip anything from your enemy, really, both in like small scale PvP as well as wars and stuff. So I think this could be a very, very useful perk. The previous duration just made it kind of pointless, or the previous cooldown made it kind of pointless, but now? Exhausted Exploitation. If you hit a target in the back, cause exhaustion for 5 seconds. This initially sounded insane to me, so I had to look into this a little bit more and see what's actually going on here. Because there are 2 types of exhaustion as well, which always makes this very confusing. So, Exhausted Exploitation will still have the current slow. It will still inflict 15% movement speed slow for 4 seconds. But on top of that, it will now apply an exhaust with a 10% stamina regen reduction for 8 seconds. That is nice to have, but I don't think it is that insane. There are other weapons that just have significantly higher, or other effects rather, that have significantly higher exhaust attached to them, where it's much more noticeable compared to 10%. 10% by itself is like Warhammer levels. It's nice, but considering you still like have to do a backstab first and you've given up another damage perk for it, not as nice as I initially thought. I think Purifying Crits, for example, would be better most of the time, or so would Penetrating Backstab. Alacrity's Punishment could actually possibly be an interesting perk now. It's a damage bonus increased from 8% to 20%, while all other damage perks are going down. It's super niche, and that's what I think makes it complicated, but if you are facing someone who's just, you know, running a haste-focused build, running Keen Speed like I would be, then this could actually become a significant damage increase. But still, one of those things, you're gonna have a harder time hitting a target while they have haste anyways. You might not benefit from it that much. We're getting 4 new weapon perks, mostly focused on healing, and then 1 damage one. Savior is healing is increased by 10 to 20% when you heal a target below 50% health. This is obviously only on life staffs. Purifying Breeze, heal for 33% of weapon damage every time you remove a debuff from an ally, also life staff only. And Desperate Prayer, when you're below 50% mana, your healing will increase by 20% life staff only. I think especially the third one is kind of a condition you can somewhat force and balance around yourself, and I think that could be pretty interesting. It could be pretty cool. The other new perk, the damaging perk, is Desperate Empower. Deal up to 12% more damage when you are exhausted. I think in this case, exhausted refers to you actually being completely out of stamina and not being able to dodge. Kind of interesting, but like, it's not really a situation you usually want to fight from, and giving up a full consistent damage perk for that seems risky. I feel like it's once again one of those very conditional ones that at the end of the day most people will not want to use. Shield perks are getting completely buffed across the board. So, for example, we're just going to take Flame Shield Ward here, increase the base from 2% to 5%, increase the base scaling. You now receive up to 15% less fire damage. So just a raw 5% increase here, and you can get that for every damage type, and I think this could be pretty cool. I think there's some very interesting use cases for this. We also get new perks specifically for the Kite Shield. Healing Defense on block, heal for 300 health. Kinda nice. Kite Shield only. Counterattack. On block, gain 30% empower for 4 seconds. That's a very easy to trigger empower, I will say that. The problem is that most SNS builds can reach very close to empower cap anyways, so you might not find the same value in that than you would on another weapon. But yeah, I think that's spicy at least. I think there's definitely interesting potentially, especially with all the other new stuff that is coming towards shields in general. Everything about shields is getting adjusted to some degree. We are not getting the perk removal that I thought, but we're getting a lot of other things. We're also getting the attribute removal and everything, so yeah, there's a lot going on. There's an absolutely insane amount of ability perk changes. We're gonna go through them quickly, and maybe we'll talk about them in more detail specifically when we look at specific weapon changes in general, but for now, let's have a brief look at them. Crippling Feral Rush improved the slow scaling. On armor, it's 20% as before, but on weapons, it can go up to 50%. And we'll see a similar pattern with a lot of the perks. They make it a lot more rewarding to have certain perks on your weapon, which was always weird, right? Certain perks were always much better on weapons than others, so they're evening them out a lot more. I will probably miss a few here. I'm not going to go through them in detail again, but yeah, this is a nice tendency that you'll see with most of these changes. Feral Rush now does bonus damage, 10% on armor, 25% if you have it on weapon. Keen Berserk improved the critical bonus scaling. On armor that's 20% and on the weapon that's 50%. Keen Berserk now also provides damage while below 50% health in Berserk. On armor that is 10%, on the weapon that is 25%. Really, really spicy. 25% while below 50% and in Berserk, and you're gonna be in Berserk most of the time if you're below 50% anyways, if you play it around that at least. So that's a huge damage boost. I think this could be very, very interesting. Empowering Rending Throw. Increase the scaling multiplier past 625. Ranged Hatchet attacks deal 23% extra damage on armor and 40% on the weapon against Rending Throw targets. I cannot overstate how massive that is in terms of damage output for throwing hatchet builds, especially in PvE. So the big problem is that throwing hatchet doesn't really benefit from all the same things that other ranged weapons benefit from in PvE now, which kind of made it fall behind, even though it was previously one of the best ranged weapons in PvE for DPS. Now, with this, that could be at least more even grounds again, because, yeah, this is like a very, very big damage increase. And weirdly enough, it may look even bigger on PTI, we'll have to find out about that, but so far at least, we're talking about 9% more damage from all thrown abilities, so pretty good. Refreshing Distancing Throw, increase the scaling past 625. Social distancing attacks within 6 meter reduce the cooldown by 34% on the armor and by 60% on the weapon. Infected Throw, increase the base damage scaling multiplier. So direct hits with Infected Throw cause exhaustion, reducing the target's stamina regeneration on armor by 34% and on weapon by 54% for 6 seconds. This is what I was saying. We have much better perks in terms of exhaustion now, and Infected Throw is now one of them. I was always very unhappy with how much exhaustion Blunderbuss gets and how little Infected Throw gets in comparison. That's no longer the case. We are looking at a very equal footing here that makes me think that maybe you can run a full throwing hatchet build. If you set this up, you get the Rending Throw going, so every throw after that hurts more, and you, yeah, have pretty decent cooldown reduction on the Distancing Throw for CC. Maybe it's gonna happen, guys. Maybe we will see it. A man can dream. I would love to see, I would really love to see an absolutely toxic throwing hatchet blunderbuss build. We'll see. But I'm just saying that these perk changes for hatchet in particular, very nice. On the Warhammer, Empowering Armor Breaker will not scale above 50% damage bonus. That stays there. Makes sense. I think 50% is enough on that attack. And Refreshing Mighty Gavel, increase the weapon gear score bonus. Mighty Gavel hits reduce the ability's cooldown by 10.5% on armor and 20% on the weapon. Argue probably still not worth on weapon, though there are other places where Mighty Gavel might have a very strong use case now, which we'll talk about soon. Penetrating Wrecking Ball increased the weapon gear score bonus. Wrecking Ball penetrates 21% of the target's armor while on armor and 40% while on the weapon. And this is incredibly hard to read, by the way they're using this wording, this layout here. Repulsing Clear Out renamed and changed the functionality to Sundering Clear Out. I am very sad about this, and I don't know why they did this. I thought Repulsing Clear Out was a very interesting niche ability that had a clear purpose, and Thundering makes it more like Thundering Shockwave. Like, of all the changes, there are so many cool changes. This is the one where I'm just like, why? This was cool. Instead, it just inflicts rend now on armor that's up to 10% and a weapon that's up to 25% for 7 seconds. It's not a bad rend, but you also just knock the target away, so guess it's better for like combo follow-up to do damage with, if that's your playstyle. Like you could do like a Repulsing Clear Out into a Wrecking Ball into an Armor Breaker. That could be a burst build. Yeah, it's cool for that, because then you have the rend, but I don't know why. I'm sad. I just really like the Repulsing Clear Out. Leeching Path of Destiny increased the weapon gear score bonus heal for armor that's 31.8% and for the weapon that's 62% of the damage dealt by Path of Destiny. Now we're getting another glimpse at what's going on with the musket. When it comes to Power Shot, removed the on-kill trigger. This ability now refreshes 30% on armor and 60% on weapons upon use, but only once every 15 seconds. Much, much better. I like this much, much better. On-kill is such an annoying condition. I really don't like it, because by the time you get the trigger, most of the time it's not relevant anymore. I guess Musket is an outlier here, but I think this is great. And we'll see something similar with Stopping Power as well. They're just making it so that you can spam Musket abilities more frequently, and play more around your abilities. So repulsing stopping power is renamed to refreshing stopping power. Again, they don't want knockbacks. There's something going on with knockbacks that I don't know why they don't like it anymore, but yeah. Now reduce the cooldown of all other trap abilities by 20% on armor and 50% on weapon on hit. I would be mad about them removing repulsing stopping power because, again, funny ability, you can troll people with it. But I'm not mad at 50% cooldown reduction on your other abilities on hit if you put this on your weapon. I think this is gigantic for disruption playstyle builds, for like mid-range builds. You can throw on your traps, you can nuke them, they come to you, you use stopping power, and you throw on your traps at them again. You can throw your bomb or whatever else you're using. I think it's really cool for that, so give them a pass. But please don't, please don't take away all the knockbacks. Take away the knockdowns instead. We have too many of those. Accelerating traps increased the weapon gear score scaling. The movement speed is now 15% on the armor and 33% on the weapon. And this also applies bleeding when you hit someone with a trap. And traps, by the way, also deal damage quicker and have a longer duration on the ground. So there's lots going on here. This is 7.7% bleeding on armor and 16% on weapon damage over 5 seconds. I think this is interesting. I like this a lot. I don't think most people will run this on the weapon just based on the values not really being high enough for that. The next one is incredibly difficult to read. Don't even try to understand this super confusing wording here because I was like, what is this trying to tell us? Now applies bleed for armor, what? So, all this is doing is, this is sweeps coup de grace is bleeding sweep. Bleeding sweeps damage is increased. It is now 14% on armor and 28% while on weapon for 8 seconds. It's not really that big of a deal. It's just more weapon damage and more armor damage. It's pretty much doubled. So it's a big deal in that regard. But the wording made it way more confusing than it had to be. Sundering Javelin now also reduces Javelin's cooldown by 13% on the armor and 24% on the weapon. Cyclone now scales better when on weapons, so Leeching Cyclone this must be. On armor this is 36% lifesteal, and on weapon this is 65% lifesteal of the weapon damage. Fortifying Perforate can now stack up to 3 times and adjusted the Fortify bonus to 10% on armor and 25% on weapon. I'm kind of confused because I'm pretty sure Fortifying Perforate could already stack up to 3 times before. Either way, 25% per stack on weapon, you can have 75% Fortify. Not that relevant in light, but there are these like very trolly heavy spear builds, and if you stack the weakens and the fortifying perforate together, the weaken from perforate and maybe a skewer afterwards, that's toxic. That is very toxic and very fun, and I want to see if I can make that happen. So yeah, maybe I'll do a heavy spear build for a bit, just to see how far I can push this, how much you can annoy people with it. I know some people have done it before, but this makes it significantly better. Vault Kick, I'm assuming this is Keen Vault Kick, increase the duration from 5 seconds to 7 seconds. We take that. It gets us to the bow. Energizing Evade Shot increased the gear score bonus on weapons and increased the scaling past 625 after hitting a target with Evade Shot. Gain 33 stamina and reduce the cooldown on armor by 16% and your weapon by 35%. This would be a pretty big buff because it would mean you always get 33 stamina even if you have this on armor, which was previously 19. The PTR data doesn't indicate the same thing at the moment, but the PTR data is a bit scrambled as well. So we'll have to find out if this is actually how it's meant to be. It's only affecting the cooldown reduction now, and you always get 33 stamina. Would be pretty strong. Keep in mind the bow lost some stamina in other ways, for example through the 300 Dex perk being changed. Lasting Rain of Arrows increased the gear score bonus on weapons and increased the scaling past 625. For the slow and bleed lasts on armor to 22%, and for the weapon 45% longer. Interesting because I feel like this is already a pretty strong ability at the moment. A lot of people are complaining about it. But hey, a lot of other things are getting changed too, so hey. Refreshing Pen Shot increased the base reduction from 3 to 5% and increased the scaling past 625. Penetrating Shot kills reduce the cooldown by 27% on armor and 50% on the weapon. Keen Tondo now also reduces the damage you take from foes affected by Tondo's bleed by 7.5% on armor and 15% on the weapon. This, I think, is nice insofar that it gives you a little bit more PvP utility with Tondo, which is not a very commonly used ability in PvP. I know some people use it, but It's not like up there in terms of popularity. And this just straight up sounds like a weaken, but just a weaken against you specifically from what I can tell. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out, if that actually works. Leeching Flurry increased the gear score bonus while on a weapon and added 1 second of invulnerability when activating Flurry. I don't know, man. This is kind of scary. Leeching Flurry already heals for a lot. Flurry already got Grit recently, and now it's getting 1 second of invulnerability. It's an annoying ability to use in PvP because it's hard to connect the hits because you're kind of static even with the tracking that you have now, and you have to very quickly follow your target. And the damage output doesn't feel as satisfying as, for example, Perforate, but 1 second of invulnerability? Really? Does the rapier need more of that? Does the rapier really need more iframes, damage avoidance, and other similar things? Strange Direction. Refreshing Flash increased the gear score bonus on weapons. Hitting a target via critical backstab with Flash reduces cooldown by 21% on armor and 40% on the weapon. Accelerating Light's Embrace lowered the base from 5 to 3% and made this more effective on weapons. Allies below full health hit with Light's Embrace gain haste, increasing their movement speed on armor by 13% and on weapon by 30% for 5 seconds. Empowering Incinerate increased the gear score bonus when placed on weapons. Incinerate deals 90% extra damage on armor and 40% extra damage on weapon to targets with a burn. Burnout applies a stack of 13% while on armor and 25% while on weapon. Fortify for 5 seconds for each target hit with a maximum of 3 stacks. So you can also get 75% Fortify here, similar to Perforate. You just gotta find a build that works for that. I don't know, the burn, like dashing through people to get Fortify and hoping you get 3 stacks, kind of risky. Kind of not how most people use Fortify. Kind of think that ability just possibly have a different perk altogether. Contagious Reverse Stab now transfers 2 conditions to debuffs, and the damage scaling has been increased on weapons. On armor it's 11%, and on weapons it's now 18%. Still not particularly impressive. I wouldn't replace a weapon perk for that. Refreshing Charge increased the gear score when used on a weapon. Hitting a target with unpredictable strikes reduces the cooldown by 34% on armor and 67% on weapons. This is pretty good, to be honest. I thought the previous value wasn't even bad to begin with, a 54% reduction, but a 67% reduction on a dash. That's a lot of sticking power right there. And keep that in mind as we talk about Crippling Reap. Remove the 50% condition, lower duration from 4 to 3 seconds, lower base slow from 0.1 to 0.08. Targets hit with Reap are slowed, reducing their movement speed by 27% on armor and 50% on weapon for 3 seconds. That is a very minor nerf in return for a very massive buff. Like the previous slow was 31% on armor and the same on weapon actually. Again, 1 second difference here, but the 50% condition made this so like underwhelming compared to, for example, a blunderbuss when it comes to chasing, that it wasn't really worth considering. Now, with Refreshing Charge, very different story. If you slam into someone with Refreshing Charge and they don't immediately avoid the attack, then maybe try to, like, you know, hop away a little bit, roll away, and you hit them with a Reap, they get hit with another slow, and then you hit them once or twice and basically your charge is back up. That's scary. That is a lot of very high damaging potential here, and chase potential. And the Great Axe in particular has struggled with that kind of identity for a long time now. It became the war weapon, the AoE weapon, which, you know, fair enough. But it used to once upon a time be the best chase weapon in the game. And it may kind of get back closer to that territory, at least through this. Obviously, it still has very slow basic attacks, so it's still hard to stick to someone. But it might just be enough to, you know, lock someone in, swap to your other weapon, swap back between the basic attacks. Combine this with like any weapon that has better basic attacks and you could be fine. So, interesting. Scary. Mending Execute increased the gear score bonus when on a weapon, heal for 33% on armor and 60% on weapon of the damage dealt by Execute. Good. Very strong. Very strong in PvE especially. Very strong in PvP even, as long as you can get Execute off somehow. Insatiable Graph will increase the damage scaling when on a weapon and the scaling past 625. Now deals 39% weapon damage on armor and 80% damage on weapon. In case you are unaware, this is a very significant buff that finally makes Grafwell on weapon actually have a purpose. In fact, so much of a purpose that I would say that in wars this will be highly favored. Because it used to be that you just get increased healing from Grafwell and the damage stays exactly the same. It went through many iterations before that, but it was just either you heal for 34% of the damage or 52% of the damage. Not really worth it. Now we're talking about double the damage on the secondary hit or double the scaling effect here. That's a bit more. That's a bit more interesting, I would say, in certain builds with certain new weapons that we already know about, like, you know, that Void Great Axe. And as far as I understand it, you can actually get the Grafwell perk on that Great Axe as well. It's not going to be easy. It's going to require a lot of stuff to get there. We'll talk about that in a future video. Subscribe if you haven't, if you want to learn more about that. But yeah, it seems like the new dawn of Grafwell. I'm still all for removing Grafwell. I want to make my position clear here. I think the wars would be a lot more interesting if Grafwell wasn't such a focus point of the entire war, but maybe that will change anyways with all these changes. But then again, I see this and I'm like, no, Grafwell is still right there. The values for Unbroken Winds here may be off, because otherwise this doesn't make sense. This is supposed to be a damage increase, but it's actually a nerf if we look at that value. Like the weapon value stays the same and the armor value is lower. According to what New World Database says about this currently, it seems that the damage on weapon will be 52% for Unbroken Winds, and on armor it will be 29%, which would fall in line with actually making an increase. So we'll see which one it is. I think it's interesting that Unbroken Winds is even getting another buff. I think Wind Chill is already very much on the way up. It's already getting recognized as actually a useful ability. So yeah, now it's getting a 1 second root as well on top of that when hitting the same target 6 times in a row with Wind Chill. So if you are getting aimed at by Wind Chill, your best bet really is just get away quickly, because otherwise you take a lot of damage and you get rooted. Ice Refresh is getting a rework. I never liked it, so fair enough. Renamed to Empowered Ice Spike. This perk has been reworked to deal 18% on armor and 40% on weapon, more damage versus rooted foes. Kinda goes in line here with Unbroken Winds. You root them with Unbroken Winds and you follow up with an Ice Spike. Of course, not the only way an Ice Gauntlet can root you. For Diminishing Orb, lower the base from 20% down to 12%. Increase gear score bonus from 300 to 1000 when on a weapon. The diminishing orb values don't really make any sense, and they're using weird numbers here, so I think they kind of mixed something up here. We're gonna say the last ones here, I guess. Orb of Decay reduces duration of the target's non-consumable buffs by 35% on armor and 73% on weapons on hit. I don't know what's going on here. The values before that are just... What's the increased gear score bonus from 300 to 1000 when on a weapon? I don't know. But anyways, better on a weapon. I think slightly worse on armor as far as I understand it. Slowing Tether renamed to Paralyzing Tether. This perk now causes a root when the tether is broken. That's scary. That is scary. Imagine having a kill team chasing a healer and then having that tether on you and you're like, okay, if I break this, I'm gone. And there's some new Void Gauntlets as well that can absolutely facilitate this in the artifact section. There's a Dex Void Gauntlet. Yeah, or you could just combine this with a blunderbuss and then you just, you just tell them, you've got you've got this distance to go from me and then you're gone. I'm terrified of this particular one. I think this is like a niche thing that I don't think a lot of people play this playstyle, but if you run into one and they play it well, yeah. Be careful. Leeching Shrapnel Blast. Increased gear score bonus on weapons. Heal for 16% on armor and 35% on weapon based on your damage dealt by Leeching Shrapnel Blast. Venturing Clawshot increased the gear score bonus while on weapons. When Clawshot connects to a target at least 10 meters away, gain 21% armor bonus or 41% weapon bonus and power for the next 3 seconds or until the next hit. Resupplying Mortar Charge increased base gear score bonus on weapons. Mortar Charge kills reload 1 additional canister and grant 9.5% on armor and 20% on weapon and power for 5 seconds. Max 1 reload per shot will not trigger after the final shot. Crippling Blast Shot increased the gear score bonus while on weapons. Targets hit by Blast Shot are slowed reducing the movement speed by 21% on armor and 40% on weapon for 5 seconds. I feel like kind of redundant though with Netshot. Leeching Crosscut lowered the base heal and increased the gear skill bonus when on weapons, increased the scaling past 625. Heal for 33% on armor and 72% on weapon off the damage dealt by the final strike of Crosscut. It's still bait. It's slightly better, but I feel like it's still bait compared to just having other life-stealing perks that are more consistent. But I can see certain use cases, but then you also have to have Leeching Crosscut on your weapon, so you know. Skyward Nullification. Increased gear skill bonus on weapons. Increased scaling past 625. Hitting an enemy with Skyward Slash removes one of their buffs. Reduce the remaining buffs duration by 22% on armor or 50% on weapon. To be honest, I would rather have this on armor and then just have Purifying Crits along with that, so you don't just rely on Skyward Nullification. I still think they should put the anti-heal on that perk instead, but that's another story. Energizing Counter. Increase the gear score when on weapons. Increase scaling past 625. When Calamity Counter is activated, immediately gain 22% stamina on armor or 50% on weapon. This honestly is a very strong perk with this. 50% or 50 stamina, I don't know if this is actually percent scaling, it should just be 50 stamina. From just having this on weapon is pretty wild. Like, you just have the safety switch that gives you half of your stamina back immediately. This is something that you can especially use if you're using a greatsword as a defensive offhand. I know some people are doing that. I know I've seen bow users, for example, doing that. But even as an offensive build, I feel like just having this energizing counter, or like calamity counter in general, is a very quick attack swing if you want it to be. It's a very quick damaging cancel. And you can just refund half of your stamina immediately. I think that's pretty good. I think that's very much worth considering in PvP, even though it's a bit of an unconventional approach. Steadfast Purification. Increase the gear score bonus on weapons, increase scaling past 625. Each attack of Steadfast Strike reduces your debuff durations by 24% while on armor and 66% on your weapon. Also, actually interesting values. We're coming from like previously 14 on armor and 20% on weapon. Now, this is like almost a self-cleanse. A full self-cleanse, pretty close to it if you have it on weapon. You have to have it on weapon, which is weird, and I don't really see the use case for it, and Steadfast Strike is not really in the best place in my opinion anyways, but it's definitely an interesting approach for this perk. Slowing Rupture. Increase the gear score bonus on weapons. Slowing enemies struck by Rolling Rupture by 25% when on armor, and by 40% when on weapon for 4 seconds. Not a massive increase to be honest, but it was already pretty decent beforehand. This is pretty much the next trading tip section right here. Armor perk changes. Ancient Ward, Angry Earth Ward, blah blah blah. All the wards are gone. Resistance perks are gone. Resilient is gone. Indestructible is gone. It's all gone. So if you want to gamble, buy those perk mods. See if they turn into value. Vigor. Increase the reduction of the effect from 11 to 15% at 700. Same with Invigorated. Once again, please put them together. Just merge them into one. Leave them at 11% and just put them into one perk. I don't think 15% will justify picking them up for most players in most situations. I understand that maybe in terms of data they may be better than they seem, but it just doesn't feel good to use at all. And I don't think a 4% increase is going to do that. However, the values for this are drastically different on PTR. Again, many of the PTR values are strange at the moment and are maybe not correct yet. So we'll have to see, but maybe they did do further adjustments to that and further increases, and this may actually be entirely irrelevant already. Shocking Heals. Base healing improved from 100 to 200, and percentage healing improved from 1% to 1.5%. Actually not bad, honestly. I haven't done any further calculations how this stacks up against Elemental Aversion or Shocking Fortification now. I would expect it to still end up behind them, but less behind them than it previously did. But then again, there are also certain anti-heal mechanics coming in now that kind of make this a bit more risky. Siege Ward is also gone. But enough about old perks, let's talk about new perks. We have the Health perk, which gives you a maximum of 2.4% extra maximum health. Pretty solid by itself. We have Enchanted Ward, which reduces your damage taken by up to 4% from light and heavy attacks. Very specific, very interesting. Doesn't work that well against most weapons, I think. I feel like you're better off just having max health. You can also avoid the ability damage and every other effect that hits you. Yeah, very use case, very niche, I would say, overall. But maybe Maybe bruisers can find a purpose for this, or maybe you can like stack this with other effects. We have Grid Ward, which is 4% damage reduction while under the effects of grid. This, I think, will be interesting for wars in particular. It still competes very much with health. It's pretty close still, I would say. But it does seem like an interesting option for a bruiser, a 300 con bruiser especially, who will often have grid up most of the time. Then we have a bunch of new damage perks, including one that so far doesn't have a weapon yet. Which, you know, take from that what you will. But you can have an extra damaging perk for everything on armor. So you can have Flame Harmony, for example. You can have 2% fire damage on your armor per piece. So you can get up to 10%. Keep in mind, this is only for elemental damage. This is not for slash damage and so on. Which does make sense insofar that all of these damage sources are also countered at once by elemental aversion. So it's easier to build against them. And we'll see something about that just below that, which is slash conditioning, thrust conditioning, and strike conditioning. This is more in line with the already existing elemental conditioning effects, where you take reduced damage from one particular type of damage here. So for example, slash damage absorption for 5 seconds after taking slash damage. According to the current PTR info that we have from New World Database, this is very much in line with the other conditioning values. This is also 4%. There could be some very interesting combinations here. So for example, bruisers could run Grid Ward, which is a damage absorb perk currently, along with slash conditioning, which is a physical perk. So you could increase the survivability quite a lot here. And you can even stack health on top of that, which is a separate perk. Amulets get the same treatments that Shield got when it comes to protection perks. All of those go up from 5%, or 10% rather beforehand, to now 15%. And they also have the lowest values increased from 2 to 5%. So these will be even more important for anything because you're more specifically gearing against particular damage types once again now. The health bonus is renamed to Adored Health, and the effect is reduced from 10% to 7% on Amulet. Mana recovery is gone. Fortified recovery has the cooldown reduced from 90 seconds down to 30 seconds, and the Fortify increased from 10 to 20%. No changes to stam recovery, I think, so yeah, it's nice, but probably most people won't really care. There will be some other perks, though, in a second, that people will care about. And Divine no longer improves the healing from potions, specifically. Instead, there is no Alchemist Reprieve, which improves the healing from potions, specifically, by 10%. I don't really know if that's worth it for most people, though, but, well, potions got nerfed, so they're 20% less effective in PvP, so maybe for that purpose. Along with that, Refreshing Recovery, when your health drops below 50%, all of your active cooldowns, ability cooldowns, will reset. This is a longer cooldown, this is a 90-second cooldown. This sounds strong. All of your active cooldowns will be reset. That's the entire full ability rotation. The moment you drop below 50% health. I don't think this can be overstated. This sounds insanely strong. And this will be directly competing with stamina recovery now. So they decided that instead of nerfing the broken perk, we're just gonna put in another broken perk in the mix, and then you can decide which direction you want to take with your broken perk. Next, ring perk changes. Leeching increased the life gain from 5.8% to 7.1%. They're really going in that life-stealing direction here. Siphoning is gone. Fire damage is increased from 5.2 to 7.2, so they're increasing the damage perks along with the damage reduction perks, and the same applies again for all of the other damage perks here too. Keen Awareness decreased the crit bonus from 13 to 7% and moved this to the crit exclusive label. This is interesting. I think this means this is going to go away from damage type, which it weirdly still is on PTR at the moment, but that would mean that you can craft this regularly along with something like slash damage, for example, and don't have to rely on illegal ring combos for that. So could be nice, could be good, even though the crit rate is significantly reduced here. Brilliant can no longer drop on any gear, it's gone. And Invigorated Punishment reduced the damage bonus from 2% to 1%, increased the maximum stacks to 10%. The exclusive label is also moved to damage type, which means I don't think, well, I don't know. There will be very few situations where this is still useful. The damage is halved, and it's only on abilities, and It requires a lot of buffs to be very effective now, whereas you could just have most of that damage outright, and it competes directly with other damaging perks now. So like this competes with slash damage now. You can have 7.2% slash damage all the time, or you can have this very conditional thing down here, which can go up to 10%, but it's super conditional. The only benefit of Invigorate Punishment stays that it applies for both of your weapons if they are different damage types, which isn't always the case, so it depends on your playstyle. But yeah, generally I think a lot less use cases overall, not entirely horrible though. Also getting some new ring perks. Healing Breeze. When you directly heal a target, you apply a 5 seconds healing buff, 10% of your weapon damage per second, I think. Very strong, very surprising. I would like this if I was a healer. Purifying. When you cleanse a condition, you will heal for 10% of weapon damage. This is weird to me. This is me like self-cleanse. This is also just barely more than a life-stealing hit. I don't understand the value here yet. Purifying Heart. When you use a heart gem, you will lose all conditions. So basically, every Heartrune becomes a mini stone form. Kind of cool. Kind of an interesting option to have for sure, if you're willing to sacrifice something on your ring for that. The earring mostly gets a cleanup, focused, beloved, evasive, mana toast, all gone. All that aggro stuff, all that mana stuff, goodbye. Refreshing Toast. Reduced the bonus to 10% at 700 and reduced the base healing and regen potion cooldowns from 30 to 25. Super confusing. As far as I understand it, based on looking at this and looking at the PTR, this means that Refreshing Toast is much, much worse. Because the base healing and regen potion cooldowns don't seem to be... It's not the Refreshing Toast affecting this, it's actually a completely different change. The potions themselves have a shorter cooldown for everyone, and you don't need Refreshing Toast for that. So Refreshing Toast will only be a 10% reduction now, and again, pots are weaker in PvP now. Probably not that important, honestly. Probably not that useful. I'm not quite sure why they don't want it to be that useful, but it's also still a thing of there's not that much good stuff on Earring in the first place. There are some new interesting options though. There's Empowering Toast now, which gives you a 20% empower for 4 seconds upon drinking a potion, which, you know, you do quite a lot, so I think that's quite a lot better. Fortifying Toast gives a 50% fortify for 4 seconds on potion drink on an absorb potion. That's confusing wording, and I don't think that's correct. Looking this up on your database, I'm pretty sure this just gives you a 20% fortify when drinking a potion. Might be that they changed that at some point, and maybe one of these things is not correctly updated. But yeah, one of those things is going to happen somehow. But I think it's gonna be an interesting perk for tanks. Most people, I think, are gonna prefer the Empowering Toast. Third new perk, Healing Heart. Heal for 10% of your max health when you use a heart gem. I think this is pretty interesting as an earring perk too, because depending on what you're playing, how you're playing, you don't need that many different perks. So, you know, just a quick safety switch here. I don't mind. It comes to tool perks. Durable is gone, and Gathering Recovery gets a buff. The healing is increased from 200 to 350 per second, and the duration is increased from 5 to 10 seconds. I think most people would still not pick this up, but it's just too weird and niche for most playstyles. When it comes to back perks, all the burden perks have their weight reduction increased from 12% to 20%, so these specializations will be a little bit more effective. I like that. Plentiful Ammo is gone. We get a new perk that I think is really interesting. Town Loyalty. Increased territory standing by 5 to 15%. I like this. I think this is interesting. I think this is possibly a very useful perk for some people. The next change here is very small, but with a very big impact. Adjusted the Keen Tondo perk to only provide benefit if the rapier is active. That's big, because currently everyone in Sandworm raids is running Keen Tondo, because it makes things so much easier, and in PvE in general. And that will no longer be necessary or useful, and I like that, because it was weird that that was a thing. So a little camera fix, and then there's an Outpost Rush change. Outpost Rush now scales players to 675 gear score. So right after the expansion, if you want to experience 675 gear score, that's your place to go. Obviously not 700, but kind of the same way that at the moment you get scaled to 600 instead of 625. Increased structure HP invasions, wars, outpost rush to account for the player power increase. Fix an issue that caused the interact prompt for reloading turrets not show on the correct item count, and another corrupted portal UI issue. PvP reward changes, just in time with the open world territory PvP stuff. We get some changes here too. So previously a player needed to be alive for at least 10 minutes for another player to gain Aethos Salt, whereas now you get an amount of PvP and PvP XP and Aethos Salt when you kill another player in open world all the time. This can technically be exploited, but it would be so slow that I guess they just set it up in a way that it's not really worth it for most players. So no matter how long you've been alive, you are worth something. After a player has been alive for 5 minutes, they'll be worth 400 Aethos Salt and PvP XP, and after 10 minutes, they'll be worth 800 of each. Very nice, I like this a lot better. The chance of getting loot from an open world PvP kill has also been adjusted. Previously this was only after 10 minutes, and then it was a 75% chance, and after 33 minutes it was a 100% chance to get a drop. Now if a player has been alive for 5 minutes, there's a 50% chance, and after 10 minutes there's a 75% chance. The season XP is drastically increased for open world PvP from 1 to up to 10 XP to now 10 to up to 100 XP. This could be a very fun way to grind through the season pass, just trying to get as many open world kills as possible to do that, but we'll see how many people actually flag up with the expansion. They also changed the Aethos Salt reward for the 200 rank on the PvP track to 5,000 salt. With some basic stuff here that at this point most of us know. Gear scores increased to 700, maximum crafting level 250, reduce the experience required to progress from 1 to 20 weapon master by roughly 30%. This particularly hits the higher levels from 15 to 20, so you can level to 15 now and do the rest quicker then. Increased family-based ward potion durations. So they will be useful now as a replacement for ward. You will be using multiple potions in some expeditions, or at least one per expedition to get through there. So they decreased their value to 5, 7, and 10%. These buffs will no longer end based on the number of hits. I think they last like 40 minutes now or something along those lines. Very interesting change. They reduced the luck bonus of the Springtide Dram to make it more similar to other luck consumables that was a bit bugged beforehand. Fix an issue where weapon coding persisted after swapping gear sets, and introduce loot biasing, a new system that will skew the outcome of loot drops towards a player's equip weight, primary and secondary attributes, and equipped weapon types. Players will now find new rare items when gathering that can be processed at refining stations for bonus gathering trade skill experience. This is like a higher tier of what we already have with like unusual bone and so on. Gatherable research items are now limited to 3 crafts per day per item, so we can't just speedrun everything that way. Fix a crafting issue that caused the rushing ice gauntlet pattern to not reward a gem slot with the item. Umbral shards. Remove the ability to upgrade gear with umbral shards. Umbral shards can now be salvaged for coin at a rate of 0.1 coin per umbral shard. That is the rate that I was expecting. I was saying like likely a 10 to 1 rate. Which is exactly what happened. So for most people this will not be a massive profit. If you've stocked up on millions of umbral shards, then you may be in luck here, then you maybe get a big payday here. In my opinion, they should have just converted them automatically and not made it like a salvage thing. Been like, okay, if you have 10 million umbral shards, good for you, you get gold cap and that's it. Because, you know, PvE speedrunners will just have a disproportionate amount of gold if they just gradually salvage them over time. But I guess a rate of 0.1 is not terrible anyways. Like, it's a 600 per expedition run, so fair enough. I don't hate it. I think it could have been done a little bit more cleanly that way, but I don't hate it. Got some salvage issues that were fixed for items that couldn't be salvaged. Human Bane trophies apparently didn't work to all human enemy types, against all human enemy types. That should be fixed. And invasion rewards were also buggy and were not giving the right named items. So now the number of armor pieces given was reduced by 1, and the jewelry is now a guaranteed reward in return. And higher rarity caches have an increased chance to give a named item. The fishing research nodes also no longer turned into logging research nodes. You can now pin season journey tasks, challenges, and activities, just like you can pin quests or recipes. Very nice. And there is the wildcard stamp for seasons now. Upon logging in each day, players will earn 1 wildcard stamp that can be used to stamp any space on their activity card. So this is very nice when you, for example, don't PvP and you want to do a whole card or you want to do a full line and there's a skull there. You can now get rid of that with a wildcard. Players can earn additional wildcard stamps by completing rows of activities. So if you complete that one row, you get your wildcard back basically. So you can accumulate quite a lot of them very quickly for just logging in, being active in the game. This is a nice way to increase the concurrent player count slightly as well. I don't think that's the main... Well, I think it is one of the goals. Yeah, I don't think it's going to make a massive difference, but, you know, just a little mental trick here and there. Then we have some more fixes here. It's just minor stuff with UI. Things were not working and some salvage didn't work properly. There's a bunch of other minor UI fixes and toggles and stuff. And nothing major here if you want to look at it. Pause here. Same thing with these ones and these ones. And that's the last batch, but it's by far not the end of the changes. There are so many other things. We have artifacts, we have weapon changes, we have item changes, we have training tips, we have so much, and the PTR is coming out. I need help, I don't know what to do. It's too much. Anyways, Twitch TV/GXloth if you want to see all that live stuff. My Patreon is linked in the description if you want to get the trading tips early. My patrons are ahead of me now at this point. They're all just chatting back and forth, finding the little tricks and tips here and there. So I will update on the Patreon itself, but the Patreon Discord is going crazy at the moment. I will have a look in there, and maybe I need to get some tips from them for a moment. This is going to be an absolutely crazy week. I will try my best to get out videos in some form. They may be less edited than usual. I may just, you know, pop in the game, show something, be like, hey, this is cool, this is new, this is one of the many things that I want to show you. And that's how it's gonna go. And yeah, then once the PTR closes down and I have some more time to actually edit stuff and record stuff, we get more into the nitty-gritty, into the weapon guides and all that. It's a busy time. I hope you understand. I, for one, am very excited about the vast majority of these changes. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. If for any reason you haven't at this point, consider subscribing and clicking the bell if you want to get notified of all that upcoming stuff. And if you'd like to support me further, feel free to head over to my Patreon. Thank you for watching. GXloth out.